Welcome, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, and thank you for taking your time to talk with us about your candidacy for the U.S. Senate and how you plan to approach environmental issues. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. My name is Judy Freiberg. I am president of the Democratic Environmental Caucus of Florida. Let me explain a bit about caucuses in the Florida Democratic Party. We are issue-based Democratic organizations under the umbrella of the Florida Democratic Party. There are several issue-based caucuses under the FDP: Progressive Caucus, Black Caucus, Muslim Caucus, Jewish Caucus, Education, Disability, Labor, LGBTQ. Our caucus is environmental, and our role as a caucus is to elect Democrats who understand and commit to governing in a way that addresses the environmental and climate crisis we're facing. The webinar topic today, as a result, will specifically relate only to environmental issues. Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, when people registered to attend this event, they also submitted questions to ask you, as they did for our other candidate conversations. We'll raise those from the questionnaires along with questions from the chat. So please, everyone listening, do put your questions and comments in the chat as the first part of the discussion proceeds. And First Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, could you please share some opening remarks with us,
Sure.
given some of the carpetbagger labels that have been given to you? What went into your decision to run for office in Florida in particular? And in general, what do you hope to offer as a U.S. Senator, particularly based on your military record and your career?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Judy. It's good to see you in person. I know we've spoken since we met in Jacksonville. I think it was first time we saw each other face to face. Glad to
Yeah.
be here with the Environmental Caucus. I'll introduce myself a little bit to the folks that don't know too much about me. I'm a 21 plus year Army combat veteran. Florida is the first place I got a chance to choose where to live. My wife reminds me at one point we moved 11 times in 10 years. So the Army told me where to go. Florida is the first place I got a chance to choose where to go. Um, my family came here as Jewish refugees from the Soviet Union in 1979 when I was very, very young. It was my dad, my twin brother, and my older brother, and a grandmother. My mother had passed away from cancer just a few months before, so dad was the primary caregiver. Came to the U.S. with $750 in our pocket. Dad was 47 years old and hauled furniture for the first 6 months before he got his feet under him and landed a union job for the Department of Environmental Protection for the city of New York. He was helping rebuild the New York City water supply as a civil engineer. That kind of got us going. Simple fact is that union job was the starting line for our American dream. It was what provided my dad a safe working environment. He was the primary caregiver, provided him health insurance, which was critical because we had lots of visits to the emergency rooms. It provided him a steady and predictable paycheck, including overtime pay. He worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I think that generated a desire for myself and my brothers to serve. We all served in uniform. My twin brother and I, he's 9 minutes younger. He's really my baby brother. We made a career out of military service. I served in postings around the world. My background is lends itself to being a national security expert and serving in combat in Iraq. Was wounded by a Purple Heart. Served and represented this nation in embassies in Kiev, Ukraine, Moscow, Russia. In the Pentagon, I was a strategist. I wrote the national military strategy for Russia. Wrote the book on Russia. So I had to have a deep understanding of national security threats, and we will get into it. But climate change and what we're seeing unfold is a national security threat. It has been written as a national security threat for multiple administrations, and then ultimately I made it to the White House and served on the National Security Council, where I became known for taking a principled stand, reporting corruption at the highest level, and that ended my military career and brought me to Florida as the place that we sought refuge away from politics to start a new life where my dad turning 94 and mom turning 79 live 10 minutes away, where I've got my a daughter living with me, and you know, not going to sit on the sidelines when we have so much at stake, whether it's for my family, my daughter's future, my parents, war with regards to our environment. So jumped in back into public service. Just when I thought I was done, got dragged back in to try to do some good.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Um, and as I said, I do try to raise the issues that I've been given by the members. And this one came from another webinar, another one of our conversations, but it's relevant in all of them. And that has to do with PAC money. This is
Mhm.
from the president of our chapter in Okaloosa. Do you take PAC money? Please explain your views on campaign finance reform, particularly as it relates to environmental issues and greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera.
Sure. So I've been endorsed by End Citizens United for a whole host of reforms that I've signed on to and have been vocal about advancing. One of these things fundamentally is money in politics. It is a pretty darn stark contrast between myself and my opponent on the Republican side, Ashley Moody, who is her entire career has been fed by taking money from corporate PACs. That is why she sided with big insurance companies, and we've got the most expensive insurance rates in the country. She is doing the same thing in the Senate. She's taking huge sums of money from big pharma and giving a pass to the health insurance companies as drug prices soar. She's involved in she's traded stocks. She didn't go there and start representing the people of Florida. She went there and started trading stocks to the tune of millions. That's base corruption. That is a stark contrast to my record of speaking truth to power and holding folks accountable. Um, Views simply are I'm not taking any money from corporate PACs. At the same time, I'm certainly uh, connecting with and looking for partnerships with the League of Conservation Voters, and frankly, a whole host of environmental groups, understanding that this is one of our true treasures. It's one of the things that make America exceptional, our natural resources. And here in South Florida, it's places like the Everglades.
Okay. Thank you very much. And on to the very next issue has to do with reforming the U.S. Supreme Court. The court has made a variety of decisions that has opened the door to extreme corruption that dominates our local, state, and national governments. Supreme Court decisions greenlight the ability of of America to cause and exacerbate climate change, to end the ability of regulatory agencies to fight pollution, or to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and transition to clean energy, to ensure that Black and Brown communities who are bearing the brunt of climate change and pollution lose their voting rights through voter suppression, extreme racial gerrymandering, and gutting the Voting Rights Act. And thanks to Citizens United, the Supreme Court allowed unlimited funding by special interests to completely fund the campaigns of their chosen candidates. It's likely whatever legislation passes to restore democratic institutions, when challenged in court, would be declared unconstitutional by the currently constituted court. As U.S. Senator, what strategies would you consider and promote to reform the U.S. Supreme Court so any legislative policies to restore democracy and end corruption would pass constitutional muster in a newly constituted Supreme Court?
Yeah. So I think that just like politics have corrupted our elected office holders, my opponent Ashley Moody, I also see the same thing with regards to corporations and the billionaire class corrupting the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has taken deeply partisan decisions. This is not a court that's pledged to to be constructionist to any any fidelity with the Constitution as it was envisioned. This is a court that's taken political action. I think we need to do a couple of different things. Federal courts are held to a high standard of both transparency and a code of ethics and conduct. That is the the base layer of reform that we need. I think taking a look at term limits, the whole idea behind having no term limits in the Supreme Court, which is it's a dark comedy, was that if you have no term limits, lifetime appointments, then in that case they're not politically driven, not politically motivated. But if the reverse is true, if they are politically driven, politically motivated, then maybe we should take a look at the reverse. Term limits for those Supreme Court justices, so they're not in there forever, continue acting with no accountability. Those are two essential reforms that I think we need to take a look at. And I imagine we could get bipartisan support at least for one of them, if not both of them.
Okay. Thank you very much. So next, I do want to talk about something that I know has come up with for you in your campaign, and that's hyperscale AI data centers in Florida. These hyperscale AI data center developers are pushing 1, 2, or 3 square miles of warehouses that they can develop containing computer mainframes in Florida. That's called a hyperscale data center. The RDECF just held a webinar this past Thursday on the issue. Florida citizens, where these are now being proposed, are against them being built, given all of the environmental threats that we did discuss in our webinar. And adding to that, it will be taxpayers and ratepayers that pay the cost of these. We're putting a YouTube link in the chat so people listening to this who are unable to attend can listen to it on our YouTube channel. Um, it's critical that we all understand what these are and the extreme threat to our environment, our jobs, and our pocketbooks. There's a number of questions about how to stop them from getting started here and the federal role in developing a U.S. data, information, and cloud-based infrastructure that is not controlled by a few big tech companies, nor by the profit motive. Many are asking for a moratorium on them in Florida so we don't face the consequences people in other states are experiencing, and so we can figure out a decent policy. How do you view the federal role and what are the policy considerations for you? Are you muted? So somebody, Julia, somebody, Kim, some needs to unmute him somehow.
Great. Yep, I'm unmuted. My daughter just got home, and my dogs are barking in excitement, so I muted myself. All right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. So we should be learning lessons. And I think the fact is that we've watched data centers go into different corners of this country. We've watched data centers, look to kind of place themselves here in Florida. And we should learn the lessons of what's happened in some of these other communities. My twin brother who is a congressman in Northern Virginia. His community is seeing massive surges in utility prices because consumers are being priced out. These data centers and the AI companies behind them are able to buy up massive amounts of utility capacity and drive up costs. So that is a deep concern. We are already getting crushed by costs here in the state of Florida. And we've got a massive a portion of our population that's on fixed income, like my dad, and taking shocks of like huge growth in utility prices. They affect my family, they affect lots of families, but they really, really hurt seniors in a big way. So that's something absolutely that we need to account for. The amount of water that these data centers consume is massive also. We are in a state in which large portions of the state are experiencing drought. The locations that some of these data centers are going into cannot take the hit of the impact on water management. So what we need to do is we need to find a way to take a step back and make sure we understand the consequences, what we call in the Army second and third order effects. You know, the reason for the proliferation of these data centers is that there's a massive growth in AI, and AI needs these data centers. But we may have to figure out a way to take a step back without crushing the sector in order to account for surging costs of utilities, surging costs or the dwindling access to water resources. I know that there are some actions being taken by the state. I'd want to take a closer look. A lot of this falls into the state's mandates, and I am looking for partners at the state level. I'm hopeful in the aftermath of November we will have a lot more partners at the state level that are like-minded about the consequences of massive or hyper data centers, as you pointed out, and what the impacts that they have on communities. But I think there are certain ideas that we're looking at right now to um, freeze data centers. If that's the action we should take, we should make sure that there are not loopholes and different types of data centers kind of squeak by. We want to make sure the communities have a voice in this process. And at the federal level, I'd frankly, this is one of those things where I'd want to take a look at the growth of data centers, the necessity of data centers to support AI technologies as a kind of a growth sector for our economy, and figure out a way to navigate both the environmental impact, the impact on consumers, as well as this sector.
Thank you. Okay. Um, the next issue then is affordability is an obvious issue in this election. Transportation of people, transportation of goods, affordable housing, homeowners insurance, these are all climate issues. Um, Voters are asking Democratic candidates to propose, and when elected, bring about change in our economic and industrial policies so that all communities of all classes and races can live safely and affordably. A short way of saying that is Democrats must genuinely address the affordability crisis in the United States. The cost of climate disasters, pollution, and environmental destruction of our natural lands and water is a major cause of how high our costs are, specifically as it relates to transportation and home ownership. And we don't generally discuss the serious health consequences to us that are now arising out of air, water, and land pollution and heat-related climate illnesses for the already inflated costs of healthcare. Here's a question from Dory in Pinellas County, who I am going to try to get to her to help me with all of these. This is brilliant. She's discussing transportation. She says transportation accounts for about 30% of US greenhouse gas emissions. Electric vehicles reduce these emissions by over 70%. The rest of the world is leapfrogging over the United States on electric vehicle and battery manufacturing. The US needs a plan to catch up and reclaim leadership. She goes on to say we need a sustainable, pro worker industrial policy. Democratic repair is climate repair, is industrial reconstruction. That's a quote from someplace that the Federation of American Scientists. What will you commit to do to remake America as a global clean energy leader?
Yeah. So this is where the system kind of again, we see the hallmarks of something broken, where we have the ability, we're in the sunshine state. We have the ability to make significant investments in wind and solar. Wind and solar could drive down, it could have some sort of incremental effect on climate change. But most importantly, it's also could be a driver of bringing costs down for utilities. We have this administration that says they're for all of the above energy policies, but they're not. They're in the pockets of fossil fuels. My opponent is taking significant money from fossil fuels. You know, tens of thousands of dollars. So where is her headspace? Her headspace is about delivering for the fossil fuel industry and blocking, you know, the the legislation and the path to electrify more of our transportation sector. She's blocking our ability to expand solar and wind. You know, if we attack the part of the core problem here, corrupt politicians in the pockets of special interests, we could break the cycle, and then we create room for folks that are, you know, independent minded, that are not beholden to you know, corporate PACs, and that are looking to deliver for their communities. And the communities here in Florida, you know, we're screaming for preservation of clean water, clean air legislation, for to reduce you know, greenhouse gases that have been driving climate change, that's created a amplified, you know, weather pattern of hurricane, more destructive, more frequent hurricanes. So attacking to me, there are some root causes to problems. Corruption, being owned by special interests, is a part of them. If we break that cycle, and then we create room for really thoughtful, good approaches. And for me, I've got a strong commitment to preserving our environment. You know, it's a personal issue. We live close to the Everglades here. My dad lives even closer. He lives in Weston. Um, it is a beautiful piece of country, a unique ecology. Um, my family's best vacations have been tethered to the national parks in this country. So you know, beautiful opportunities to spend like 10 days in an RV going to Yellowstone and Glacier. And I understand this is a treasure that is in the inheritance of our children, unique inheritance that we cannot squander. Um, and I think, frankly, we probably have, outside of these special interests, outside of fossil fuels and corrupt politicians, we actually have some common ground with the political spectrum, because there are naturalists, there are you know, outdoorsmen, there are, you know, folks in the libertarian, in the conservative Republican world, that are also strong allies. There are hunters and anglers and want to preserve our natural lands. That's why when, you know, Senator Mike Lee was trying to force down this provision to sell off public lands in the big ugly bill, it was stripped because it was a cry from across the political spectrum, Democrats and Republicans, that were critical of this idea of selling off and attacking kind of our public lands and preservation. So I think we could do some good here. I strongly believe that this administration in particular is a anomaly. Yes, there are too many politicians owned by the corrupt, and corrupted by special interests, but this administration singularly has been attacking the EPA, has been attacking Clean Water and Clean Air Acts in a way that we have not witnessed in a long time. So that is, I think we could, when we get past this administration, we could find common ground and strengthen the EPA, at least strengthen the Clean Water and Clean Air Act. That you know, plank holders were on the Republican side that delivered some of these transformations, and I think we could work. That's something I want to undertake.
When I spoke with you in Jacksonville, you mentioned your role in the military and how it shapes your views on climate change, specifically with respect to national security and the use of fossil fuels as our primary energy source, how it sucks us into. Um, I'd really like you to talk about that.
Yeah. So I think in
Yeah.
the military, we talk about, you know, drivers of instability, how we are compelled to uh, uh, maybe deploy the Department of Defense, the military, to different crises around the world. Part of that is, if you think about the military pitching in with regards to earthquakes and natural disasters from Haiti to the South Pacific. Those are more frequent as a result of climate change. But there are even, you know, more basic challenges that we foresee from a national security perspective. Temperatures increasing, water shortages will create conflicts that will create deep instability in places that are already hot, and suffering, the kind of increased temperature. So more conflicts in Africa, more conflicts in other corners of the world as folks compete for water, the lifeblood of all living things. So from that standpoint, we have to address a climate change the climate change crisis that decades from now, our children's generation, our grandchildren's generation, for me, will be facing a world that's hotter with more acute climate crises more frequently that are going to put this nation into harm's way. That's the way I think of climate change.
Thank you. Next, the Biden climate and infrastructure legislation committed significant funds to develop resiliency funding and transitions to clean energy. 40% of all those funds were mandated by statute to reach environmental justice communities, defined as underserved communities, often Black and Brown communities, or working class, lower income communities. Would you restore the Biden climate legislation and make changes to ensure that environmental justice community receive those resources?
Yeah. I think the fact is our resources should go to where the problems are most acute. Oftentimes, these are economically depressed communities that also are, minority communities. But wherever those effects are, that's where we should be putting resources, right? That's where the damage has been done. That's where we need to put more infrastructure, whether it's Michigan, resources in there to clean up, lead in the water system there. All the Superfund sites. We just need to follow the problems and address those problems. That's what we need to do.
Okay, so now I'm going to give a little plug for everybody to attend on June 11th at 7 p.m. our next webinar, which will be on affordability and the environment. And again, we're going to ask all of our candidates and their staff to attend because it will be helpful in candidates understanding if they get elected specifically what they need to do in order to address the affordability issue, whether it's in environmental justice communities or whether it's homeowners insurance rates, whatever it is. We also are going to explain how the formulas that FEMA, Army Corps of Engineers, homeowners insurance companies use in order to fund restoration of homes damaged by climate disasters. Those funds often don't go into what is called redlined communities because of the way in which the funding formula works. We're going to explain that and how state and federal legislators and local communities can fix that. So that's a plug for that, and we're putting a link, aren't we, Kim, in the chat so people can register for that seminar, I hope.
Yes, there's a link in the chat.
Okay, thank you. The next question is water pollution and regulation of of CO2 emissions and greenhouse gas emissions as a way, and the need to bring back the regulatory agencies after what the Supreme Court did to to um, ruin their ability to have authority to do anything. So Michael in Indian River says, what is the appropriate role to address water quality issues throughout the country to restore water resources such as the Indian River Lagoon, meet public needs for potable water and wastewater treatment? Are increased federal funding and/or increased regulation appropriate?
Hmm. I'm not sure how well versed I am on this particular issue. I think I go back to a basic principle here. I think it should be a driving principle, is that communities deserve clean water, deserve clean air, and that our legislators representing these communities, the elected officials, should be doing what they can. And too often, you pointed out whether it's a redlining or existing or legislation that blocks resources from going to places where they're needed. It should be priority driven. There's a it shouldn't be like it shouldn't be artificially driven. So for me, I think the fact is that I'm not. I just fall back on the fact that I'm not beholden to any of these other kind of interests that drive me to compromise on making sure we deliver clean water, clean air, and also, frankly, figuring out solutions that don't crush um, the economies. Like we need to figure out how to keep the Everglades clean, but also preserve an agricultural sector. We need to figure out how to preserve a transportation sector. We have a massive state here in Florida, but do that by encouraging transition to by encouraging electrification. I think there are problems that we've if you travel, or I've traveled the world pretty extensively, we have massively underinvested in real transportation infrastructure. We spend a lot of time on roads, that's great, but there are other parts of the world that have decided to leapfrog and have invested in trains, high-speed trains. We should be thinking about those types of solutions. That could be a huge a way to reduce greenhouse gases if we made some big investments into high-speed rail. So, I'm ready to take on some of these challenges. I'd like to learn more about the specific issue and see what the lane is, because sometimes we have to understand what the state level lane is and local government lane is versus federal lanes. For me, it's going to be about making sure that we deliver for folks with clean water and clean air.
So one of the things that the Supreme Court did to us and Project 2025 did to us, which
Yeah.
was also a mass multi-decades campaign by the Heritage Foundation
Mhm.
to basically set it up so regulatory agencies are no longer to regulate this
Yep.
stuff.
I track that
And
this year.
so,
Yeah.
right, and that's a corruption issue, and that is
Yeah.
a huge, we are not no longer allowed to regulate capitalism,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just saying that is point of personal privilege.
No, I think you're look, and that's an important point to make. I think the fact is that um, we've learned over the course of a couple of centuries of industrialization that without guardrails, we have our workers abused. Without guardrails, we have massive Superfund projects and massive pollution. The simple fact is that the government has a role. Democrats and Republicans, but probably more so Democrats, have been thoughtful about delivering regulation in a way that protects communities, protects Americans. And we need to do that, as well as be quite thoughtful about the effects on our economy and working people. And there are solutions to this. We just need folks that are capable of tackling, the what seem like daunting tasks until you start digging in and realize that there are a path to solve them.
Okay, last comment before we go to the chat. Um, Another topic we will be covering in the June 11th webinar. Many of us want to use tax dollars. Many of our Democratic candidates are proposing to use tax dollars to shore up homeowners insurance. However, homeowners insurance as it is currently set up is unable to cover the increasing number and destructiveness and costs from the climate disasters which we believe are the primary reasons for the collapse of homeowners insurance in Florida and other states. How can we balance the use of our tax dollars to reform
Yeah.
disaster relief and recovery resources, including FEMA, the Red Cross, homeowners insurance, at the
Yeah.
same time devote all necessary resources to reduce and phase out greenhouse gas emissions, transition to clean energy, and develop carbon capturing strategies and technologies?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, most Floridians agree with you that there is a climate change component to why we have more frequent storms. The reason they do that is because we have they see it affecting their homeowners insurance policies, and the policies go up. I think that there's something to be said about we've got a national flood insurance program to allow folks to remain in communities, that have been there for generations. I think that there is probably I'm increasingly comfortable in a federal government role to bolster insurance companies. We have this concept moral hazard. We don't want them to do absurd things and just kind of write policies and squander our public funds, but we should put together a fund that allows big insurance companies to stay here in Florida and compete against each other to drive down costs. Part of the problem that we have the highest insurance rates in the country is because we have had a flight of the big insurance companies, and that's left a lot of folks absent options for and absent, frankly, solvent companies that will be there and be tested in the eventuality of a hurricane and damage. So we want to make sure we keep the big proven players in place and that they're bolstered by a national fund that keep them here. I think we also, frankly, we've forgotten for some reason about science, and that we should be investing in science, and that science, in a lot of ways, can solve some of these problems with regards to clean energy, alternative energy. I think that we're in a world in which we should be looking at there are new generations of nuclear power that are not Indian River or not the kind of older plants that could be part of the solution set for alternative energy. Approaching a generational shift in nuclear power that doesn't have the same kind of environmental impacts, and is a huge way to wean ourselves off of kind of fossil fuels, traditional oil and gas. So investing in science and technology is a place to look. Investing into the generation and educating our children and our workforce to be able to work in these areas. It's pretty powerful when a lot of folks transiting. I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands of folks leaving the military have found jobs in wind in Texas. That these are communities, or these are trades and specialties that can drive a workforce of the future. So thinking about education, thinking about making sure that we bolster insurance companies, thinking about there was a third one actually. It's always got to be three, but thinking about it'll come back to me. But thinking about big picture ideas to address the issues of climate change. Oh yeah, sorry. The third one was frankly making sure that we've got a functional FEMA. So sometimes we look at the immediate issue that we deal with on a daily basis, which is costs, crushing costs with homeowners insurance. But then we need to look at something slightly more remote, which is what happens when you get hit by a hurricane, which is there you need a functioning FEMA, you need a functioning emergency relief and rebuilding fund. And then you take a step back and you think about the systemic issues of how do you address the costs of homeowners insurance, and a social and a national kind of safety net, national fund to be able to support insurance companies, looking at all these different layers and addressing all these different layers holistically. That's kind of the job of a strategist, thinking through complex problems and coming up with solutions.
Um, s- you said something interesting when you talked about nuclear, which is a huge hot button issue for a lot of people. They hear it and they go, no, no, no way, because they think about the current generation of nuclear power plants. It is a longer discussion I think environmentalists should be having, that a lot of environmentalists are afraid to have, because it's one of those issues that people get very, very emotional about. So just saying that, I support the conversation, so that people are better educated about what you were talking about, which is looking at new generations of technology.
There
Um,
are, I think this one, we'll just dwell on this one for just a second. Look,
yeah.
one of the things I got a chance to do on one of my on our state, I did a statewide swing. I've done just hundreds, probably over 150 events in about a 4 month period. One of the things I got a chance to do on this big, massive statewide swing, 34 different events, is I flew back down to Miami from Tallahassee after I qualified, and I took a conservation flight. It was myself, my daughter, and a pilot that, is very focused on kind of making sure people are aware of the interplay between civilization and the Everglades. They're so close together. It is shocking how close together. And I flew over to the nuclear power plant in Homestead, south of Florida, and watching those cooling ponds and seeing how those kind of empty out into Biscayne Bay. That is not the kinds of nuclear power that we're that is in the research and development phase, that is on the cusp of being commissioned and built. We're talking about a new generation of power that is frankly far more efficient, far more sound, and with less risks. These are the important solutions we should be taking a look at. And take part of being a leader is not just following. Yes, I want to make sure that I represent my community, 23 million Floridians, but also, when there is a need, talking about issues and bringing consensus, bringing people together to on board to, with regards to my vision, and then coming to a decision on whether it's something we want to, as a community here in Florida, want to pursue.
There's I thought I wouldn't do this, but I'll do it anyway. Somebody from this A Sierra Club chapter, said to you, please be careful listening to the nuclear industry's sales pitch. Nuclear is very profitable, especially in the regulated utility state of Florida. You mean the non-regulated utility state. But regardless of that, I did say just to the individual who wrote that, I think it needs to be a conversation in the environmental community with scientists, with people, because it's one of those things that people can get very, very upset about and have difficulty discussing. So just to say that, not to say it's a good idea or bad idea. Um,
Completely agree. These
okay,
are these are
yeah,
conversations that we need to have.
that's right. Yeah. Okay. So now if we could start with the questions in the chat. Um, Here's one from Duval, probably from the chair of our Environmental Justice Coalition that is part of the DECF. How will you help EJ communities who are unable to live in their homes any longer because of contamination to ensure that these residents will be compensated for relocating to contaminated-free communities in Florida? Example, she's talking about St. Louis, Missouri, where I'm from, actually. Um, the Readjustment Act, radiation compensation, we need a Florida Readjustment Act to expand contamination compensation to overlook communities, to include workers who have been exposed to their harmful chemicals as well. Now, that's on a state level or on a national level. I think what she's asking is, do you think it would be possible to um, give authority to regulatory agencies, not just to stop pollution, not just to clean up, but to hold the polluters accountable by doing this?
Yeah. It's if folks know anything about my background, I am a huge proponent for accountability. I'm a huge proponent for guardrails. I'm not just saying that. I reported corruption at the highest level, regardless of the personal consequences. I think nobody is above the law, and absolutely, we should be taking a look at, if there was negligence, if there was malice, we folks should be held accountable.
Thank you. Okay. Um, what would you do as a U.S. Senator to protect the Everglades, keep the restoration process going, which has both state and federal components? This is Bill from the Alachua. He's the president of our Alachua chapter. Um, with has both state and federal components to it moving forward, how would you balance off protecting the Everglades with the agricultural interests that you mentioned surrounding the Everglades?
Yep. It is a beautiful place. It is a unique place. It's interesting that within our own family, within the Democratic family, we have a multitude of views on this thing, right? We've got the agricultural sector with its unions that is advocating for protection of big sugar. And then on the other side of the equation, we should all have a recognition that there are obviously effects from this from a sector that there are annual burns and that they use all sorts of chemicals that have an ecological impact. So this is something that we as a democratic family are going to have to take a look at. I think for me, um, it's abundantly clear that we have taken we have taken all guardrails off. We've taken kind of all of the normal regulatory environment that we've had for a long, long time in this country to protect water and air. And that so I'm gonna recommit. Um, I'm going to try to take a leadership role to recommit the Senate and Congress to make sure that we protect our water and air, and frankly, restore the Everglades as much as we can. After more than a century of interaction with humanity and the waterways and causeways, try to restore as much of it as possible to its natural flows. That's where I want to go with preservation of the Everglades.
Okay. Here's a really interesting question. Sierra Club Calusa Group. Please compare contrast Trump's national emergency, which is benefiting big oil, gas, coal, with the real national emergency, which is the climate crisis.
Hmm. That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, up is down, down is up. I think the fact is that, I go back to the fact that there is a role for Senate. There's a role for House. It's a co-equal branch of government. Senators are there to represent the interests of their people. When we have a world in which we are far off from reality, it is the role of our senators to make sure that they exercise their powers, exercise their oversight functions, you know, hold up funding, exercise the power of the purse. Oversight includes hearings, subpoenas, do those things, not give a pass. And that doesn't make a difference which party we're talking about. That's just the right thing to do, regardless of a party, of who's sitting in the White House. A senator's job is to provide oversight and work as a co-equal branch of government. So that's what my expectation is. When we are far off the mark, that are and that's part of, I think, my mandate is in this 2 years, this special election that takes me through 2028. We have to run for re-election. I live in a world in which I have to reinstate those guardrails, to reassert the power of the Senate and deliver some guardrails, deliver some checks and balances, and at the same time deliver some relief on costs.
Um, okay, the next question is, how do we communicate this real national emergency? I think she's saying, or he is saying, which is climate change. How do we communicate that to the electorate? I will tell you one of the reasons we are um, choosing the titles of the webinars the way we are, which is affordability, um, the data centers, um, money in politics, obviously, that we're going to do in the summer. I'm going to talk about overdevelopment because these are issues that resonate with voters. So hopefully the candidates can pick and choose from using these how they can uh, talk to voters on those issues, and then hopefully help the candidates with the kinds of conversations you're having with us, so that we can exchange views on what to do if you get elected, which is a different issue than how to campaign on it. So
Yep.
I think she's asking that. How do you communicate the real climate change emergency to the electorate?
Yeah. So I think first of all, I remember Judy when you and I spoke in Jacksonville. One of the
Mhm.
things I specifically told you is that these are not kind of one-off conversations. I'm not the subject matter expert on everything and anything and everything. I've got my deep expertise on geopolitics, national security, defense. I undertake projects and study them and come up with what I think are good judgments on how to take things forward. So I'm very much looking for partners across, at the national level, because that's what senators do, as well as the state level to figure out, solutions to problems like Everglades preservation, cleanup, and so forth. Um, that's just kind of the way I see the world. You know, I think
Thank
it's,
you. Okay.
yeah, no,
So that's okay. The Sierra Club is Rhonda. So that the person that's been asking some of these nuclear questions. Thank you, Rhonda. Um, the See, okay, Mary Jo she's in Palm Beach County. She's a big volunteer with us and really helpful. What committee will you be requesting to be on? How will these committees help you make a priority of major environmental issues Florida faces? Climate mitigation, resilience, clean water, particularly.
yeah. So I think there are two committees. There are two kinds of committees I would be interested in going serving on. I think there's likely to be something um, in the Senate Armed Services Committee, potentially Senate Intelligence Committee, uh, um, Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Those are kind of my core competencies, and they all have to do with one way or another. They actually have to do with the big picture climate change issue. If it's defense, then it's the fact that this is a national security challenge, and we approach it from a national security perspective. I think the other side of the equation, it has to be something, frankly, very much laser focused on costs and bringing down costs. We have some anchors to our economy here in Florida. It's the agricultural sector, it's travel and leisure, it's transportation, it's something to do with commerce and ports. So I'd be laser focused on figuring out something that I could deliver on the cost front. Um, I think wherever I land, it doesn't have to be specifically exclusively environmental. It's just that I'm going to pay attention to this issue and make sure I apply kind of a climate change environmental lens on whichever committees. But I think it's going to have to be something that is consistent with my deep expertise and background on national security, and something that connects on cost. But the hat over that, the chapeau, is still going to include environmental and climate.
Okay, thank you. We have some people in here. There's a lot of discussion on various things about the nuclear industry talking about burying waste. Um, I, in another question, will you consult with the DECF when you get elected or if you get elected
Yeah.
on a lot of these issues? Hold discussions with us about some of these things. And that's a good question.
Yeah.
We would love it if you or whoever gets elected to the Senate would come back and talk with us, since we are your constituents,
Yeah.
on a lot of these issues as you're figuring out how to, for example, deal with the data centers,
Yeah.
hyperscale data centers, I should say.
Okay.
Um,
So
yeah.
it's an important question. I mean, I think that the question is particularly urgent because right now people don't feel like they actually have representation that they can connect with, that will address their concerns over environmental issues. That is unfortunately the dark reality of having two Republican senators, one of them appointed completely in the pocket of special interests. Most of the state not represented by a Democrat that is kind of committed to this issue. So of course I'm committed to making sure that we have representation on whatever issues you have, that we have a powerful um, you know constituency services effort so that folks can come to us with their concerns and not get some BS, response form letter, but actually get their questions answered. So that's again, I mean, yes, in the environmental lane, but frankly, more broadly, that folks have a representative that's going to answer their concerns.
Thank you. We are almost at the end, so I am going to um, eh, give some final remarks and then um, ask Lieutenant Colonel Vindman to give his final remarks. So upcoming, I told you all, there's going to be a June 11th webinar on affordability. Please register for it, attend if you can. Um, and you will also be receiving invitations with our newsletters. Um, you can listen to conversations with all the other candidates on our YouTube page and on our website, our Facebook pages. At this particular one, as soon as we're done, will be posted on the YouTube channel. Um, and also the webinar on data centers will be posted there as well. We're planning a statewide AI hyperscale data center moratorium activity. It's in the works now. Um, I'd like to say that I learned so much about data centers I did not understand before I worked with Michelle Dietrich, who's the National DNC Climate Chair on this. I did not know about the level of threat to our water and energy from this, the pollution, none of it. So look for details on how you can join that activity. Kim, I hope you put something in the chat so people could sign up to volunteer to help with that particular activity or anything else we're doing. We anticipate having an activity to advocate for moratoriums in the county along with the Democratic candidates in your county. After June 15th, we hope to put on 3 statewide environmental candidate forums. Alex, I haven't talked to you about that yet. It will be sort of like a debate that we will have for governor, U.S. Senate, and Attorney General positions. After that, we will make our DECF endorsements, candidate endorsement decisions. There will be an upcoming webinar not scheduled yet on overdevelopment in Florida. And one in the middle of the summer, hopefully, removing the grip of special interests on our elections and restoring democracy. That will be co-sponsored by the DNC Climate Council and also by many of the national state Democratic environmental caucuses. So please do join our caucus. We need your help to do all this. We're all volunteers, all of us. Go to our website, join the caucus. It's $10 a year to join the state caucus, and then your county caucuses, most of them are $15 a year. Please volunteer to help us, particularly with the data center moratorium activity we're starting. It will be a game changer for Florida if we can stop these before they start to get established. And now again, thank you so much, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, for joining us and attending today, but not just that, for your time and energy and dedication to public service. And now I'm going to ask you to close our webinar out and give us your final remarks.
Sure. Just I think the most important thing I could share with you is um, it is a blessing and an honor to be able to undertake this Herculean task to represent 23 million people in this massive state. One of the benefits is we put a lot of road miles. We've visited lots of parts of the state, and it really is a wonderful place to live. Very, very diverse across the Panhandle, the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic Coast, and the Keys. I'll be in the Keys this weekend, and it is definitely something special, worth preserving and protecting. I look forward to undertaking that task.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And now we will end the webinar.